everybody, we're proud to announce our Saturday morning cartoons brought to you by Hey Poopy Podcast.
Dumping every fourth Saturday of the month.
Stories taken directly from our interviews. These are one-of-a-kind masterpieces of hilarious proportions.
Animated by Matt Holtzclaw, our very first guest of the podcast.
We are so excited, we're going to poop our pants!
For more information, go to heypoopypodcast.com.
Hey Poopy, how you doing? Hey Poopy, how you doing?
I'm just, trying to find a place with like-minded people to talk about like-minded things about me, about poop and stuff.
Hey Poopy, how you doing? Hey Poopy, how you doing?
Oh man, what's this right here? Is this a podcast about poop?
And now, the Hey Poopy Podcast with Dave and Ellen.
Hi, everybody. We're back.
Yay! It's dump day.
It's dump day.
We are here at the Hey Poopy Podcast with
Dave
and Ellen, and it's episode 69, but it'll always be number 2 to us. And I'm like beyond so beyond excited about today's episode because we finally have somebody on that I've been talking about for probably 68 episodes. We have Dr. Susan Kolod, the New York-based psychoanalyst, who's going to be able to tell us what's going on with our brains.
Welcome to the show, Dr.
First
Sue.
of all, thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. First of all, I just want to say how much I like your theme song. That is really fantastic.
Yeah, we love it. It's really fun.
Was it written for you?
Yes.
Yes.
By the great Jordan Perlson, a friend who just went to town with it. We loved it.
Yeah, fantastic.
Sue is the mother to a good friend of Dave and I's, and she wrote a paper recently all about the anal stage, and I'm so excited to talk about all of this. But before we go into it, Sue, we always go into asking our guests, how have your poops been recently?
Well, I have to say, that's another one of the other few things that seems to be going really well. Completely regular. There's no difference. I poop before breakfast, and then I usually poop after my coffee.
Ooh.
Had a few occasions of a little bit of diarrhea, which I'm sure is anxiety related.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, which I'm super excited.
I'm
super excited to talk to you about that because I always think that there's such a big mind-body connection to anxiety and diarrhea.
Absolutely.
But I emailed you the Bristol stool chart. Do you know what type you are usually?
Oh, I didn't see that. Can you briefly go over it, and then I will do my best to identify my where I fit on the chart. It's
a chart that doctors use that basically describe how your poops have been. So number 1 would be sort of these hard, almost on the constipated side of nuggets, if you will. And then it goes to 1 through 7. 7 being just total diarrhea, liquid poop. And then usually what you want is the number 4, which is the gold standard, the nice smooth, sort of log shaped. So 4 is kind of where you want to be.
We like to
call the 4 a no push, no wipe, where it just falls out of your body, and when you wipe, there's nothing on the paper.
There's nothing there. Okay, I would say I'm somewhere between a 4 and a 6.
Ah.
Okay.
Because,
that's great, though.
Sometimes it's ribbony, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, and occasionally I've been having diarrhea, but not very often, I have to say. It's been not a problem.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah. And it's great that you go 2 times a day.
Yeah. Anything that can, keep you feeling normal in a time like this is very, very important. So, for example, being able to sleep reasonably well, eating, working, pooping, all those kind of things, being in a good place with your body, I think, is very, very helpful in a time when there's so much anxiety.
Completely.
Agreed. And actually you're faring pretty well for a complete pandemic. So I would say, thumbs up.
Thank you.
Dave, how have your poops been?
Might have been the same. Like I've been having like between like 4 and 6s. More like let's just average it out and call it a 5. I would say. You know, nothing to really write home
So
about.
we're pretty synced with our poops.
Pretty much, yeah. A tiny bit of anxiety, some little extra snacking that I normally wouldn't do during, but we've been cooking and like eating pretty healthy, like our usual. So I think it's pretty standard, like run of the mill poops, but nothing like super crazy here and there. Like I'll slide into the 6 realm, but for the most part, I would say 5s.
What about you, Ellen?
I literally made a humongous poop right before I called you both, and I'm glad that we pushed this interview back an hour and a half from our original time, because I would not have been able to hold it in if we were talking. But yes, it literally just fell out of me. It was like a type 4-5. There was like a little bit of pieces to it, but I think it's all the psyllium husk I've been drinking that's been keeping me so regular. I love awesome. Psyllium husk. Bless that stuff.
Nice. That's amazing.
But I filled up the bowl so much just now that I was afraid it wasn't going to flush down.
Oh my God.
I had this moment because I always put the lid down before I flush because the particles,
Yes.
And then I had this moment where I lifted up the lid to make sure after it flushed down, because I was like, I hope that was huge. I don't know if that was a 2-flusher. So
I love the fact that, too much information doesn't apply to this conversation because, for me and for my colleagues, we talk about fucking and shitting and pissing and, and we try to get our patients to talk about it in an open way. And it's not, a lot of people just aren't that comfortable with it, but it feels very natural to me, but most people it doesn't, I would say.
Yeah, I would say the majority. Oh. Most people do not like talking about, especially shitting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been doing the podcast for a little over a year now, a year and a couple months, and we still have guests on that get nervous about talking about poop, and we're like, this is a safe place. Like, we've been doing 69 episodes. We have zero judgments here when it comes to poop. We encourage you to talk about it. So
right.
Yeah.
I mean, there are times when I get totally grossed out, but still, again, it's an open space, so feel free.
Well, you're allowed to get grossed out, but we have no judgment.
No judgment
towards the person telling the fantastic story.
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
So, Sue, please tell us a little bit more about yourself before we go into everything else.
Okay. Well, I'm a psychologist. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I have additional training as a psychoanalyst, but I'm not what you would call a classical analyst, where, kind of the New Yorker cartoon analyst, where all of my patients lie on the couch and I don't say anything. I was trained at a place called the William Allenson White Institute, which is in Manhattan, and some of our most illustrious founders were Eric Fromm, Rollo May, Frieda Fromm-Reichmann, Harry Stack Sullivan. So it's called an interpersonal psychoanalysis, and is very much focused on relationships and relationship patterns and how your early relationships get played out over and over again, and as your life goes on.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yes, and I have when there's not a pandemic, I have an office at Columbus Circle in Manhattan, and then I have another office where I work one day a week in the Ditmas Park section of Brooklyn.
Oh,
but
cool.
Since March 15th, is it March 15th or March 16th? March 16th, which was a Monday, my practice has been totally over Zoom and the phone. And I'm located in upstate New York right now. So I guess in terms of, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you've been keeping busy, though, I'm sure, with Zoom.
Very busy, very busy. People really want to talk about their experiences that they're having now with their therapist, and most of the people that I work with seem to be grateful for the fact that we can continue over this medium.
I wouldn't doubt it. Like, this is a very stressful time for a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And so having somebody like you is probably beyond helpful.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It seems very important to people.
yeah.
So I was going to say some of the things I specialize in. I work almost exclusively with adults. I used to work with children and adults, but now I'm working almost exclusively with adults. And I am interested in sexuality and how sexuality is either played out effectively or ineffectively in relationships. I really love dreams and dream interpretations.
Ooh,
that's nice.
One of my latest interests is recording my own and other people's corona dreams, because people are having a lot of nightmares, not surprisingly.
Oh, yeah. I totally could see that. I also,
Yeah.
I've done a bunch of therapy in my life, and I've learned so much from it. But one of my favorite things, which you probably know because it sounds like it's something you do in your practice, the book "Getting the Love You Want" with Carl Hendricks. Have you heard of that book?
I've heard of the book, but I have not read that book. It sounds like it's a good book, though, huh?
It's fantastic, and it talks. The title is ridiculous, but it talks about your new brain and your old brain, and how you're constantly trying to repair the relationships of your past, like your mother and your father and stuff, and how those relationships are carried into your present day. And that book taught me so much.
Yeah, it sounds like it's based. I haven't read the book, but it sounds like it's using a lot from attachment theory.
Yeah,
That how you attached to your primary caretakers when you were small, how that particular style of attachment gets re-experienced and replayed out over and over again throughout your life.
yes,
Wow.
yeah, that was very, very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, thank you so much for still practicing and helping others, and then talking to us about the anal stage and your mind-body connection and your poop.
Okay.
Yeah. And real quick, do you have anybody you talk to like, I'm sure you're being overwhelmed with, like, obviously taking care of other people, but do you have an outlet or something you can, like, a place to go or talk to? Not go physically, but like,
Well, I'm very much in touch with a group of colleagues right now. I'm involved at the American Psychoanalytic Association. I'm co-chair of the Committee on Public Information there, and I'm part of what's called the COVID advisory team. So we're meeting pretty regularly to try to come up with ways to help first responders, to educate the public. It feels right now that there's an intense need and desire to read things that can provide some sense of meaning to what we're going through.
right.
And so we're writing, like the post that I wrote about why am I so anal, that is for a blog that I edit, which is called Psychoanalysis Unplugged. And our members are really wanting to write a lot about their experiences right now in working with their patients. And so we've been flooded with submissions from our members with blog posts about, it's a community blog. It's not just me, or just me and another person. Anyone who's a member of the American Psychoanalytic Association can write a blog post. And me and my co-editor, Jack Drescher, we edit them, and it's on the Psychology Today website. And so we've been putting out a lot of posts about quarantine and social distancing and trauma, and how trauma is getting re-experienced through this particular trauma. So I'm talking a lot with my colleagues. We're not always sharing our our terrors and anxieties, but that's part of what we're talking about.
Right.
We're talking about how to help other people. So that's a good outlet. And my family has a Zoom meeting every day at 10 o'clock in the evening.
Oh, it's amazing.
Aw.
That's great.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're about to set up is that we're going to try to do a series of peer supervision groups without a leader, just peers. So I volunteered to organize one of them, and that will benefit me as well as the other people in the group, because it will give me an opportunity to talk about what's happening with me and with my patients.
Right.
People.
That's amazing. I think that's great. You have an outlet like that, provided. That's nice.
Yeah.
Completely. So going to your paper about being anal, I was wondering, could I possibly be stuck in the anal stage because I like talking about poop so much?
Let's see. Well, it would be hard for me to, first of all, let me say that I don't believe people are stuck in a stage. I just don't think of it that way.
Okay, that's good.
That's the way Freud talked about it. He talked about it, and it was in his seminal work called 3 Essays on a Theory of Sexuality, which he rewrote several times. And if he were still around, I'm sure he would be rewriting it and re-editing it. That was one of the wonderful things about Freud. He wasn't rigid in that regard. But everybody if you know anything about Freud, you know about the oral, the anal, and the genital stages of psychosexual development. So, and interestingly, Freud never really observed infants or small children.
Because don't those stages come from being an infant?
The oral stage, coincides with breastfeeding and nursing, and it's from birth to 1 year. Then the anal phase is from 1 to 3 years. Oh, I forgot the phallic phase. Yeah, that's from 3 to 6 years. And then the genital phase is the one that follows that. That's more like approaching adult sexuality. I could talk for 10 years about and all the things that's been written about it. I won't do that. I'll just get down to the basics here. The idea behind it is that certain parts of your body become eroticized at various stages of development. So the lips and the tongue get eroticized during the oral stage, during nursing, and the anus gets eroticized during the anal stage, and then the phallic phase is kind of obvious, and the genital phase, which is when you achieve mature sexuality, is, well, in Freud's version, that would be penis in vagina.
Yeah,
and an orgasm that for the woman that only originates from vaginal penetration. That's something that he's very much criticized for these days, because he believed that clitoral orgasms were some inferior infantile version of the vaginal orgasm. Jesus. But nobody believes that anymore. So just want to put that out there. But to go back to your question, Ellen, if you're stuck in the anal phase, and I think this is what I wrote about my blog post. Most psychoanalysts don't really believe that these personality characteristics necessarily emanate from difficulty with toilet training. I mean, basically, that's what he was saying. The anal stage is really, really interesting psychologically, because pooping in the toilet or pooping where your parents want you to poop, as opposed to just pooping anywhere, pooping in your diaper, is the first time a baby realizes that he or she has some control over their environment, and they can do what their parent wants, or they can decide that they're not going to do what their parent wants.
Yeah.
And that's, you think about, and this is, if you're around small children and you've ever tried to toilet train a child, you will know that in many, many, many cases, there's a lot of struggle around pooping in the toilet.
Yeah.
So it's the stage of development when a child realizes they can assert their will, and they can assert their will over their parents. And I guess another way you can think about it is it's one of the first times that the parent is imposing something on the toddler or the small child that has to do with trying to civilize them.
Yeah.
So these personality characteristics, let's go over them a little bit.
Yeah, I've also seen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've also heard it as even like first child, middle child, and like younger child, or depending on how many children are in the family. I've heard like sometimes because the first child is the first one to get potty trained by the brand new parents, that they can be more anal because the parents are so much more on top of them, and then the parents like become more relaxed as the more children come around, and so they're not as
absolutely true, because I think parents have a lot of anxiety about their parenting with the first child that hopefully and frequently does get relaxed with subsequent children. And there's something about getting your child to be able to poop in the toilet that feels for the parent like it's an accomplishment. And if you can't get your child to poop in the toilet, that you failed. And I've heard moms bragging about how their babies were toilet trained when they were 9 months old, which is completely absurd because a 9-month-old is not cognitively developed enough to be able to make a decision that they're going to poop in the toilet or not. So,
and they can barely walk at that period.
Exactly.
I know pooping's like that's like next level.
I hear about
the toilet.
Right. When I hear about a 9-month-old being toilet trained, what that says to me is the mom or the dad puts them on the toilet and makes them sit there until they poop, and then they applaud or whatever, and then they say, "Oh, the 9-month-old is toilet trained."
That's insane.
Yeah, but actually, it's the parent.
Yeah.
The parent is toilet trained. So the characteristics that are associated with the anal retentive personality, excessive cleanliness, extreme orderliness, need for control, obsession with money, because money is, in Freudian analytic terms, money is a symbol for feces.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Filthy lucre.
Oh,
so these are concepts that are, I think, interesting to play with. I wouldn't take them as hard facts by any means.
Yes. We on this podcast always talk about how you shouldn't flush your money down the toilet, meaning like especially in times where we're hoarding toilet paper, like paying for very expensive toilet paper. We believe on this podcast about bidets. You should wash over wiping because then you use less toilet paper. So the fact that money and feces are very connected is even funnier to me because we're literally trying not to flush our money down the toilet, but then we're flushing our poop down the toilet.
Yeah. Well, if you think about, anal retentive, the idea of holding on to things, that because that's how the little kid defies their parent, is they're holding on to their poop, they're not letting it out. And if you translate that to money, you can kind of imagine the miser counting their money and holding on to it and not spending it. And there is something that seems symbolically potent about making that analogy between the two.
Yeah, I totally see that.
Yeah.
When you said Filthy Lucre, all I could think about it was like there was a Sex Pistols album called Filthy Lucre Live. Just like had like a random flashback to like when I bought that cassette.
Well, the toilet paper thing is really quite interesting.
It's insane to me.
What, the hoarding of the toilet paper?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I want to know where that came from. Like, what started that? From what I can figure out, I can't figure out exactly where it started. Like, what was the one thing that like triggered everybody?
Well, my thought about that, because I'm totally with you. We have a bidet here. We don't use very much toilet paper. The toilet paper we use up here is biodegradable because of our, sewage system. And so, it's not particularly pleasant to use, and we have a bidet, which works much better. So, but it is just weird when you go to the grocery store, which we try not to do very much, but fully stocked with everything but toilet paper.
Yeah.
And so maybe we'll get one or two rolls. And to go back to what I was saying about it's the first act where parents are imposing civilization on their child, it feels a little bit like there's some holding on to the toilet paper, like that's the way you're going to hold on to civilization at a time when it feels like everything could potentially fall apart. I mean,
which almost goes back to the anal stage.
Pardon me?
You're that almost goes back to the anal stage, which you were talking about, like having control. And so if your only control is having an abundance of toilet paper, like, that's so funny how, like, very primal that is.
Yeah.
It is very primal. I mean, the fantasy that you would poop and not be able to clean yourself is extremely disturbing for a lot of people right now, I think.
Completely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like I'm totally unsympathetic. I think that at a time like this, everybody feels like they have to have the basic things in their house. But the fact that the toilet paper thing would get so exaggerated is really fascinating.
Yeah, it completely is.
I heard one guy call
for
it...
us...
For
us on the podcast, it's been amazing that with the memes that have come out for our Instagram of the different kinds of toilet paper jokes. But otherwise, I have no idea what's going on with it.
I heard one guy call it toilet paper, called it mountain money. That was so funny. Which I thought was hilarious.
That is hilarious.
So I thought maybe you might be interested in something that I found about the history of toilet paper.
Oh, yes,
yeah, please.
Okay. It dates back to at least as far as the 6th century, when a Chinese scholar wrote that he dared not use paper from certain classical texts for toilet purposes.
Oh.
And before toilet paper was invented, people used leaves, seashells, fur pelts, and corn cobs. Yep. And, of course, your left hand, right?
Yeah.
I remember, but I was in Turkey in 1966, and if you went into a bathroom, you would see handprints of a left hand on the wall with poop.
Oh.
Whoa!
That's what you use your left hand for.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. The ancient Greeks and Romans used small ceramic discs and also sponges on the ends of sticks, which were then plunged into a bucket of vinegar and salt water for the next person to use.
Wow.
I also found that someone named Seth Wheeler invented toilet paper and put it on a roll. He patented it in 1891. That's pretty late.
Yes.
Yeah, we did a whole episode actually on the history of toilet paper and all that stuff. And yeah, it's crazy what we're using before toilet paper. I mean, like shards of ceramic stuff, like the whole corn cob thing. I mean, could you imagine? Like now, 2020, we're going back to corn cobs, everybody. Good luck.
You have to wash your corn cob and reuse it.
Yeah, with vinegar. And for the next person, I'd be like, I'd be like, you know what? I'm just probably going to die. That's just fine.
No, but that's where we go back to the bidet. Like, if you really need to, just wash it. And especially if everybody's stuck at home, get in the shower. Just wash.
Right. Not that, you can get the big pieces off and then go in the shower, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So funny.
So funny. So talking about the anal stage and your poop, and talking about toilet paper, what kind of, you usually said you like toilet paper that's biodegradable because of where you are, but is there like a certain brand that you go for?
We use Scott toilet paper up here.
Yeah. Nice.
That's one of our favorites here on the show.
And for the same reason?
Well, I mean, yeah, for me, it's just like, I just like it because like I'm just like thrifty sometimes, and I feel like I get the most bang for my buck. And with the whole and with the bidet too, it's like you don't really need that much TP. So, and there's just so many like layers on that roll that just lasts forever.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so we use it sparingly, and we use Scott toilet paper. And when we're in the city, I guess we use Charmin, something a little bit softer.
Oh,
okay. So you kind of go back and forth. Interesting.
Exactly.
And do you hang it over on the roll, over or under?
I hang it over, but I did have something here about this guy, Seth Wheeler. The diagram on the patent application shows that the flap comes over the top and down the front.
Yeah.
So it was originally meant to go over the top.
Yeah.
Dave?
My argument just being that, like, just because it was on the patent doesn't mean that, it can't be improved. I'm like most things, like the first round, okay, I get it. Great. That's awesome. TP, love it. But, we can improve these things by going under.
Well, I guess if you're talking about poop, one of the themes that would come up was that you don't want to be too rigid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, frankly, I don't care which way it goes,
awesome.
over the top or on. It doesn't matter to me.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer.
When we did our toilet paper episode, this was our third episode, so it was well over a year ago. I was doing all this research, and I am one of those kind of people who do go into people's homes and will switch the toilet paper if they've hung it under. I will switch it over because I feel like they've done it wrong, and I'm going to teach them how to do it right. But then after doing the research, I realized that I'm an asshole and that I should let people have their own personal preferences.
Yeah, I was going to say, that does sound a little anal.
Yes.
You think? Super anal. She's
you
like,
can totally make fun of me for it. I opened up this can of worms.
Ellen's like, I know best.
I know you had some other questions for me, but I was curious, Ellen, what you meant when you referred to yourself as having an anal personality.
Well, I am a firstborn, so I'm assuming, I don't remember it very well, I'm assuming that my parents were a little more rigid about teaching me how to potty versus my brother, who was the second child. And so there are certain things in my life that I'm very A-type personality about. And so, like, changing people's toilet paper rolls for them.
There's a right way and a wrong way.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's also, kind of an anal characteristic.
So, but then also the fact that, like, yes, I have from the beginning of time loved talking about poop. I think farts are the funniest things. They never get old for me. But I've also, we've had my father on the podcast, and I've talked about this many times. When I was a baby in the bassinet, and I could barely walk or do anything, my mom said my dad would come home from work, and my mom would yell at my father, "You need to pay attention to your daughter." And he would come over and fart in my face in the bassinet.
That's a nice way to pay attention. I bet that's not what your mom meant.
No, but for me, I was like, it's so obvious that I have, like, totally equated farts as love and attention. And so that's why I think it's so amusing. Like, I am very, very close with my father. Obviously, if I can bring him on the podcast and talk about poop, I have a pretty good relationship with him. And so, like, the fact that even subconsciously farts are so, like, loving to me and so positive to me. So,
did he tell you, or does he remember why he did that?
He just thought it was funny.
He thought it was funny. Yeah, farts are funny.
Yeah. And it got to the point where he said that I, even as a tiny, like when I became like a tiny child, like 3 or 4 years old, I would fart in his face. Like I'd be sleeping in the bed with him, and then I'd get up and fart in his face while he was sleeping, and he thought it was hilarious. So like,
it was
a
form of
back.
communication between the two of you.
Exactly. But it was more than communication. It was love. Like, it was our way of saying, like, I love you. So I'm obviously stuck in this anal stage in so many ways, you know? So,
do you feel like you have an excessive need for cleanliness?
I don't. Which is like, I'm going to say something that everybody on this who listens to this podcast is going to think I'm an animal. I have not been like that into washing my hands before this whole pandemic. And so like, I will wash my hands when I'm done going to the bathroom, but I'm not as like anal with that as most people I know are. Now I have become, because I don't want to be sick, and I'm washing my hands for the 20 seconds. But before, I wasn't as, like, anal with that kind of stuff. But I am when it comes to, like, my clothing. I really like my clothing to be clean. I don't like wearing jeans, like, 2 days in a row. So there are some parts of me that is a little more cleanly than other parts. But
well, I feel like I can ask you personal questions since this.
Oh yeah, go right ahead.
Do you know anything about how your toilet training progressed? Does anybody ever talk to you about that?
I really don't know. The only thing I do remember is that, like, when I finally was potty trained, I could pee on my own and wipe myself. But if I pooed on my own, I would scream for my mother to wipe me. Like, I did not want to touch the poo.
Oh, that's interesting.
I do remember.
You don't know
that.
any of the details about whether you were cooperative or whether you were rebellious, things like that.
I think I was more cooperative. I also have talked about on the podcast that, like, when I was little, I thought the poops lived in the toilet tank. And so whenever I would poop, I would say goodbye to them, and I'd be like, go home, poopies, go home. Oh, so, like, I was very connected to my poop. But I do know that, like, my brother, being the younger child, he pooped all over his crib and smeared it everywhere. And I don't remember any story of me smearing poop anywhere. So he was a little bit more rebellious and playful with his poop. And
it sounds that way.
Yeah. And I remember being in the bath with him, and I was like 6 and he was 2, and he pooped in the bathtub, and that was the last time we bathed together.
I'm sorry, that's gross.
Yeah, it was very gross, but it was
disgusting.
Like, I think he was, being the younger child, a little more adventurous with his poop than I was.
Yeah, he was pushing the envelope there.
Yes. So I'm assuming, like, my potty training was a little more rigid, and I was a little bit more clean about it than my brother was.
Well, I have to say, it sounds like your potty training was completely within normal expectations, and it doesn't sound like there was a whole lot of struggle or trauma or anything like that associated with it.
Yeah, the only trauma I would say is that I and going to the mind-body connection on how I think I did have a little less stress when I was a kid, and I had irritable bowel syndrome. So I was either constipated or had terrible diarrhea, and so my butt would always be in pain. And I remember my mom putting Vaseline on my butt all the time because it was always painful. So that was the only, like, trauma I had as a kid. That's why, as a 42-year-old woman, I'm drinking psyllium husk every day, because I want to make sure that I can poop. Like,
well, I would think having your mother put Vaseline on your butt, your anus, would have been kind of pleasurable. So that could have been a kind of erotization of your asshole. It is possible.
Yeah, I could see that.
I'm loving this whole, like,
it was so painful all the time. It was nice that somebody was relieving the pain, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm loving this Ellen session right now.
Well, Dave, you know I've been dying to get a therapist on here for forever. So
no, this is like your dream. This is fantastic. I'm loving this. I'm just sitting back here, just like enjoying the show. I love it.
The fact that Dave and I started this show together, it was actually Dave's idea to start this show with me, but only because I am so vocal about pooping and farting. And Dave's family, he grew up completely different, where like my dad is farting in my face and making jokes about it. And Dave's, he's admitted that his family once never brought farting, poop, any of that kind of stuff up at all.
Yeah, my parents never talked about it.
Your family was very repressed when it came to pooping.
It is never like, it is dealt with it like, you know, like any other thing. Like, okay, he has to go to the bathroom. But they don't like, we didn't celebrate it. Let's put it that way.
Not the way my family did.
No, not the way Ellen's did.
Right.
My dad's not farting in my face.
You don't talk about the consistency of your poop.
No, oh my God, never, ever. I mean, my parents would deal with it like,
the
you know.
fact that Dave is comfortable doing it now is impressive to me. Yeah,
I mean, it's my parents talked about it like, you know, it's like, oh, when you're a kid, like I'm constipated, like help me. Like it was more like a sense of like, you know, we have to help our child, not like
I see.
You know, it was just more like a parental type of duty rather than.
It was a medical issue. It wasn't like a topic of conversation.
For sure, yes.
Right.
100%.
It was like factual versus
very scientific.
Like, funny. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, my family was, I would say, more on the repressed side, too. There wasn't a lot of conversation about it. Nobody talked about farting. It was embarrassing to fart out loud.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But my husband's family was quite different. As a matter of fact, he has an uncle that made a record of different kinds of farting sounds.
That is hilarious.
I wish I had it. I mean, I heard about it. I've never heard the record.
God.
I think it's gone. But
if you can get a copy of that, we would love to hear it.
All right, I'll ask him. I can't imagine that anybody would still have it.
Oh my God. It's got. I bet you it's got to be online. It's probably digitized at some point.
Maybe. But anyways, he's really like very open about farting. He loves to talk about poop, and so it's kind of rubbed off on me. And you know, I one of your questions was that farting at work. I do try not to fart at work. I'm not really sure what the big deal is, but I do try not to. But at home, it's like I don't care.
So going back to your partner, were you more repressed before being with him, and so he brought it out that you could talk about it more freely?
Yeah, he's very comfortable with bodily functions. He also belches really loud, and I never did that. Now I do that too. So,
but as being a therapist, does that like help you with like? I mean, even going back to the whole anal stage, like, has that like alleviated anxiety around bodily fluids?
I wouldn't say it necessarily did in my practice. It's nice, you know, when you're at home to not have to control your farting. Or, I mean, he was toilet trained at an insanely young age, and his mom was extremely rigid. And so, you know, it may be that his obsession with this is kind of a reaction to that. You know,
that makes sense.
Against that, yeah.
So he's rebelling almost.
Yeah. But he's a lawyer, and I remember when he became a partner in his law firm. He and a number of other people from his firm who all became partners, we went out to dinner together, and somehow we got talking about toilet training. I have no idea how we got to that. But anyways, all of them said that they were their mothers told them that they were toilet trained before 9 months.
Oh, wow. That is fascinating.
It is.
Yeah. Because these are some very obsessional people.
Yeah. And the fact that, like, a lawyer, I think of being an A-type personality.
Exactly,
so,
yeah.
Like, A-type personalities and being toilet trained so early in life, like, seem to be going hand in hand with one another.
Yeah, I think so. I really do. So I think there might be something to this about control. That issue of control. I believe that part. I'm not sure whether
for sure.
You can go the other way, where you say if somebody is fastidious and is obsessed with cleanliness and is very controlling and is focused on money, that means that they had problems with toilet training.
Oh.
I'm not sure I believe that it goes.
Yeah. And is your husband
other things?
Is your husband firstborn?
Yes, he is.
Yeah. So it goes back to my theory that I think firstborn.
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. I think it's absolutely true.
I mean, I'm firstborn.
Like what you said about parents. Oh.
But Dave, do you feel the same?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like I go back and forth. But I don't know.
Do you know anything about your toilet training experience? Has that ever been relayed to you?
I mean, my mom. I do remember having a conversation with my mother saying that, like, when I was younger, I would just like wipe obsessively just so I wouldn't have to deal with like poop. It's almost like I need to like make sure like every last little remnant was completely gone.
I see. So you were really fastidious.
Yeah. I remember her telling me that.
But then Dave tells too about like more recently you're more comfortable, but like it sounds like in your 20s you were very, very particular. Like you didn't want to poop outside of the house.
No, for sure. I didn't like
gross bathrooms that you didn't want to be a part of.
It took me like a long time to like just get more comfortable with like just shitting. Like I would never like go outside. Like if I was like out and about somewhere, I mean, I would just hold it in until it was so uncomfortable. And to the point where I was just like, this is so stupid.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have I guess you could call it a kind of a phobia of particularly pooping in a public toilet. But some people won't pee in a public toilet either. One of the things that I find kind of interesting in terms of my office is that some people get there early and they spend a lot of time in the bathroom, or they spend a lot of time in the bathroom after their session, and other people wouldn't go in there at all to either pee or poop, and they come at the very last minute. They don't go in the bathroom, and they don't go in the bathroom at the end of their session.
Interesting. I mean, I have no problem peeing like in public. It's just like going to the bathroom, like just. I do have a slight memory of my father taking me to the bathroom when I was really young. Him just like putting toilet paper everywhere. So that maybe that's
like on the toilet seat.
Yeah, like everywhere, like just so I wouldn't, because like this is dirty. So maybe I had the thing like just imprinted into my brain. But after a certain point, when I was like when I was younger and a young adult, after a while, I'm like, this is so uncomfortable not going in public. Just fucking do it, and like just it feels so much better. So it took a long time, but yeah, I definitely like. I mean. It depends on where. I guess it's circumstantial. I think it more depends on where I'm at, because like if it's like a bathroom that just looks like just heinous, I'll just suck it up and wait till I get home or find a better place.
Yeah.
Like I can't. I'm not really like loosey goosey with like.
Given a message that was
for sure.
Pretty loud and clear that you associated bathrooms and pooping and with dirtiness.
Oh, completely. Yeah. I mean, I've definitely, I would say it's for sure relaxed. And obviously doing this show, it doesn't bother me as much, but even to this day though, depending, obviously we can't go out right now, but when we were able to like actually go out and like, do things, it was like, the bathroom situation, if I walked in and I just kind of like did a quick scan, it depends. It was like a 50-50 kind of chance. Like, could I handle?
You want to make sure that you would be comfortable there.
Oh yeah. Like, so,
Where Dave knows, I literally will poop anywhere. Like,
this is true.
If it has to come out of my body, I will find the closest I am the queen of pooping in chain, like big, like chain stores like Target, Home Depot, grocery stores. Like, it's crazy. I don't know what happens. Sometimes I just walk into those stores and I beeline straight to the bathroom. Like, I am like a total public pooper.
Yeah.
Well,
that's true.
I think one of the things that stimulates wanting to poop is if you get excited. So, like, if you're in a store and you like to be in a store and you like to go shopping, it can make you want to have to poop.
Oh, please, we need to go into the mind-body connections. I'm excited that you just even said that. So it's like excitement can make you poop, and is there anything else that like can hinder and help?
Well, this isn't really that interesting, but stress, of course, affects your ability to poop. And I actually have a little information here. Thoughts and emotions triggered by stress can have an effect on your stomach and your bowels. Duh. The reverse can also happen. What goes on in your gut can cause stress and upset. And during periods of heightened anxiety, hormones such as cortisol, adrenaline, and serotonin can be released by the brain. This raises the amount of serotonin in your gut and causes stomach spasms to occur. And this is the thing I thought was interesting. If these spasms happen throughout your entire colon, you can get diarrhea. But if the spasms are isolated to one area of the colon, digestion can halt and constipation can result. So it can either result in diarrhea or constipation, depending on where the spasm occurs in your colon.
Wow.
That's nuts.
Oh my God. Because I always am like, it's so funny to me how stress can constipate some people, but give other people crazy diarrhea. And you just broke it down scientifically.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But why you would have a spasm throughout your colon or only in one place? There's probably a psychological explanation for that, but I'm afraid I don't have that. There's only one time I remember. I don't tend to get constipated. There's only one experience I had where I was very, very constipated, and that was on my honeymoon. We went to Spain and Portugal, and when we passed the border from Spain to Portugal, that evening my husband and I got into a horrible fight. And we were in Portugal for a whole week, and I did not poop a single time. And then when we went back to Spain, I immediately pooped.
Wow.
That's my only experience with constipation. I just don't get constipated.
Yeah, because that happens. We've talked about that a lot on the podcast. Even travel can give people either really bad diarrhea or really bad constipation. And I always think that travel, even if you're traveling to some place that's beautiful and relaxing, it still can be stressful.
Yeah, a lot of people get constipated when they're traveling, which is why you may notice if you go to a place where they have a big buffet, they often have prunes.
Oh,
fascinating.
That's amazing.
Oh, I would never eat those, but yes, prunes do make you go to the bathroom.
But they work. They work.
They do work. I just can't. They're so gross to me.
Oh, I love prunes.
Well, they kind of look like poop, don't they?
Exactly. I guess poop in, poop out, right?
Right.
Oh, God.
I love prunes.
Yeah, I think prunes are good.
Yeah. Thank you so much, because I always totally tell people I think there's a huge we talked about on the podcast how women seem to poop less, and I actually think there's a psychological thing connected with women more than men about pooping, that men are just more comfortable with their bodily fluids and taught from a young age, you're a man, you can get dirty, where women are supposed to be pretty and clean, and they're supposed to their dresses are supposed to stay nice. And I feel there's a hang up there psychologically.
Well, if just comparing the two of you, I would say Ellen seems more comfortable pooping anywhere, and Dave seems more concerned about cleanliness. So that would kind of be the opposite of what you're saying, wouldn't it?
I agree with you, but I'm a very different type of lady.
Ellen's a unicorn. Ellen's a unicorn.
I mean, I think you probably would know more about this than I do, because I don't actually talk about pooping that much with my patients unless there's an issue about it. And some people do have an issue and they do talk about it, but I have not talked about it regularly with people, so I wouldn't know whether problems with pooping are more common, or are you saying constipation is more common in women?
Common with women, yeah. It's like we read a book about. I read this book called Fartology with Stefan Gates, who was a guest on the podcast, and he even said in the book that women poop a lot less than men. And I don't know if it's like the intake of food, or maybe women eat less than men, but it just seems like men also fart more than women, but that's also like a hormonal thing. Women's farts smell worse than men, but men's farts are larger and there's more of them. Yeah, so I think it's like a psychological. I feel like I know so many women who are always trying to be nice, clean ladies, and poop is not a clean thing. And so there's, I feel like a psychological hang up there.
I think it's definitely like the gender roles that like, that are pressed upon women more than men, as far as like, like you have to be like this certain kind of like person. And then poop doesn't really fit into that category. Also, I mean, I think there's a little bit of physiology in it too, from that Fartology book too, like just how our guts work and everything. Maybe women, like maybe their insides are a little different. I mean, obviously they're different, but I mean, like maybe they process things certain ways. But I'm with Ellen. I think it's more of a psychological thing, in the sense where like,
Yeah, I mean, it could be hormonal.
Yeah. I think it's a mix of things, but I definitely think a lot of it's like, psychological. Because like, I mean, most guys that I know, friends of mine, like they farting, and that was like never a big, in front of your guy friends, that was like just what you did. And like no one it was never like, no one ever like shamed you for it. It's more like they thought it was funny. Whereas like most of my friends that are women, I've never heard them say that, except for Ellen.
I think I'm a rare breed because of the way I was raised by my father. I'm really close with him, and he farted in my face since I was a child. So how many kids' parents farted in their face is a sign of love, You have
a whole nother level of that. So I think you're not the normal example. You're not a really good example in the data set.
You know what would be interesting? Maybe somebody did a study about this. I've never seen one. To compare how little kids are in terms of pooping and how they are when they grow up. Like, was it your brother? It was your brother, Alan, that smeared poop around, right?
Yes.
So he was very, as you put it, adventurous and uninhibited about it. But I'm imagining, although your family sounds quite flexible, I would imagine that he was given a societal message that wasn't okay. It's a little bit like if you think about masturbation. Little kids often masturbate, but then they're given a message that's by some parents that they shouldn't do it and it's bad, and then they get all tied up in knots about that. So I think the same thing happens with pooping. There's some kids who just naturally kind of like it and don't feel inhibited about it, but they could get a very intense message from their parents one way or the other that it's either it's okay or it's not okay, and that could change their natural tendency to either be comfortable with it or be more controlled about it.
Yeah.
Well, the funny part about that, going back to my brother, is he's very anal now. Like he works at a corporate job where he wears a suit, and he has like almost no sense of humor anymore. Like, and as being an adult, he's less rebellious than. And I'm like the artist in the family. I'm a little bit more relaxed and quote unquote rebellious with my lifestyle, my life choices. So
I mean, I'm not.
Well, obviously, I don't know anything about your brother, but I would be curious to know what his trajectory was. That he went from being, it sounds like, pretty loose and adventurous to being such, to use an appropriate term, such a tight ass.
Yeah. But don't you think? I mean, I'm no expert, but I feel like I've had friends that like I'm still like close with that I've met, I've known since I was young, that we all kind of followed like not similar paths, but like we all kind of have the same sort of ideologies. We listen to the same kind of music and this and that. I think certain people just kind of get into this like I call it the us versus them, where the us is like really like minor and the them is like mainstream, where they kind of just fall into these social patterns of, well, I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to like do these things like in an adult life, and they just kind of like just become that thing that they necessarily want it to be or become. Like they just kind of like just sort of morph into that. So maybe your brother's kind of like, well, I'm supposed to have a stick up my ass guy because that's what everybody else does around me.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, I'm obviously
maybe you're talking about ambition that, you know,
possibly. Yeah. I mean, sure.
That, you know, your ambitions, what you want to become, sometimes harness what you might be naturally and can change you to be almost the opposite of what you seem to be when you were a child.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also look at it as my father worked a corporate job. He wore suits to work. Like, I think my brother almost felt like he had to follow in my father's footsteps, which is funny because my father and I are, and not that my brother and my father aren't close, but I'm very close with my father. And my father and I laugh, and we have, even my brother will say, you're more like Dad than anything else. And I'm like, yeah, because Dad and I have the same sense of humor. And even though my dad worked a corporate job, he's like a lot more like funny and can fart in my face. So yeah, it's funny how that all happened.
Yeah. Should we ask Sue about the panther floor? I just kind of I'm so curious about like your take on this.
What's that? So our favorite question to ask our guests is, if you have to go to the bathroom so badly that it's coming out of you, Bristol 7, diarrhea, and there's absolutely no toilet in sight, will you poop in your pants or will you go someplace on the ground or floor?
Oh, totally. I would poop on the ground. I like to poop on the ground.
That's awesome.
That's great.
You asked a couple of questions. One of them was, I think, the funniest place I pooped, or a weird pooping,
or even the grossest. Yeah,
grossest. Maybe. Those are two different questions, because I could talk about the grossest place I pooped. But let's see. I have the questions here, so I can just look at them. Accident story.
Yeah,
funny story. Okay, this happened last year. I was in the Isle of Hydra, near Athens. And I was hiking up to a monastery, and on the way down, I had to poop really, really bad. Just like you said, I just didn't think I was going to be able to hold it. And luckily, there weren't a lot of people on the trail, because it is a popular trail going up to this monastery. But there are a lot of donkeys that go up and down. So I just went over to a bunch of donkey poop and pooped on top of the donkey poop.
Oh my God!
So it looked like it wasn't mine. It was from a donkey.
Oh, that's actually really smart. That is so smart. I love that.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, that's
like farting and blaming it on the dog, but you're pooping and blaming it on the donkey.
Exactly.
Oh my God, that is so good. I love that.
That's brilliant.
Do you want to hear my grossest story?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because I'm kind of like Ellen. I could sort of poop anywhere, but and I don't mind squat toilets at all. But we were in China. We were in Beijing, and they had, I don't know if you've heard this from many of your guests, but they have these huge public toilets that are not segregated into men and women, and it was around like a trough, and people were just like publicly pooping in this thing all together.
Wow.
And
oh my God.
That was the only place that I have ever been where I just was like, I can't do this. And I left.
There was no partition that like separated people?
No partition.
Oh my God.
Wow.
No. That's my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
I was about to say, Dave, that's your
not do that.
nightmare.
There is
awful.
There is absolutely
Disgusting.
zero way I could do that. I'm sorry. I couldn't do it.
I've never been in that circumstance. I'm wondering if I could or couldn't.
You definitely could, Ellen.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much thought I could poop anywhere, but, I guess everybody has their
limits.
Everybody has
Their
their
limits?
Yeah, that was mine.
You walked in and you were just like, nope.
Exactly. It's like, I couldn't believe my eyes. It's like, no.
Yeah. You're like, survey says. Nope. Oh my God, yeah, that's like my worst nightmare. That would haunt me for like years.
Yeah.
Okay, you remember that forever now, right?
Oh yeah, I would.
Which is like going to a psychological point of view. We interview so many people about their pooping their pants stories, and I love how even on our last episode, while we were interviewing her, and we sent her the questions beforehand, she had like over a month to like think about everything, but like memories were popping up while we were interviewing her. And I've always heard that like the more traumatizing things will stick in your memory longer than the positive things, because it's like our brains like old like reptilian responses to remember bad things so we don't repeat that anymore versus remembering the good stuff. Can you like...
Yeah, I think that's generally true. You know, you don't remember being at the beach and, you know, having an ice cream cone as well as you would remember almost drowning. You know, that's the one that sticks in your mind, is the traumatic memory.
And pooping your pants is very traumatic, especially if you do it in public.
Oh, my God, yes. Yes, nobody ever wants to do that.
Yep. Yeah.
But it's great for this podcast because everybody remembers those stories very, very well.
Yeah. Look, I don't actually remember ever pooping in my pants. I'm sure I did at some point in my life, but I don't remember doing that.
Or you just block it from your memory completely.
Yeah. Just stuff
Maybe,
it down.
or else, you know, I would just find a tree and poop behind it, you know. But I guess like it's you know, it's interesting. I was talking to somebody who likes to go on long bike rides, and you know, during the pandemic, that is one thing that you can do, is you can go out and go on a bike.
Yeah.
But she was saying that she was feeling somewhat inhibited from going on a long bike ride because there wouldn't be anywhere to poop.
Well, there's plenty of empty spaces now. You can just probably take a shit in the middle of the street now. And nobody will be around.
Oh, my God. I wonder if people are doing that.
I mean, I'm sure someone has. They're probably like, finally.
Well, on our last episode, there was somebody got caught on one of those Ring video doorbells pooping right in front of their door.
Oh my God!
Yeah, mad
in
pooper.
Brooklyn,
which also
just right here in Brooklyn.
Yeah, we talked.
They were pooping in front of somebody's door. So,
like talking about that story,
incredible.
like I completely forgot afterwards. Like a friend of mine had said that there was had a similar incident in their neighborhood, close to where I live in Brooklyn. There was someone going around just shitting on doorsteps and like stoops. Yeah, crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, the mad shitter.
Was this a homeless person, or was this
I don't know.
somebody who just
Clearly,
couldn't find a bathroom?
well,
or
I don't
what?
know. I think it was. I think the low hanging fruit is like, yeah, it's homeless but I think it was someone who was just like, it seemed very personal.
yeah, disgruntled.
Oh, they were doing it as an aggressive. It was an aggressive act.
That's what I thought. Yeah, it just seemed like like it. Because I feel like if you're homeless or if you're obviously, I mean, look, if you have mental issues, I get that part. That's not like
you can't help it.
yeah,
right?
but
There's
I mean,
nowhere
like,
to go.
and if you're homeless, I imagine you want a little bit of modicum of like decency and a sense of like, I'll try to go somewhere where people don't see me. It's already bad enough. I don't, you know, people. I think I'm pariah anyway. But I think this was more like personal. Someone's just going around like, you know what?
We've done,
shit.
But Dave, we've done news stories that people like getting in trouble for pooping who were like, we're not homeless.
Completely.
Who like poop in a parking lot at a store or pooping in somebody's yard. Who think is somebody who goes on a daily run and they always poop in the same person's yard. Like,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy people out there. There's a lot of crazy people out there.
That's a real act of rebellion. Now that would be interesting to connect up with that person's toilet training experience, because that seems incredibly rebellious to go on a run and poop in somebody's yard, the same person's yard every time.
Yeah.
Like if you did it just once, that's one thing, but doing it multiple times, it almost seems like a serial offense.
Like
well, definitely.
It's like a compulsion.
It is.
It's like a compulsion. Like you're just like, I can't not do this.
Yeah. Right. I have to poop in this place.
Completely. Oh, I'm glad that it's never happened to me. Or I don't have that compulsion.
Is there anything else, Sue, you want to bring to the podcast of
Let's see.
your
I was
extensive knowledge? I mean, we know your daughter. I don't know if you have multiple children.
I have one other child, and I have a younger daughter.
Oh, yeah, I've met her too. She's a doctor, right?
Yes, she is.
Yes. She's
Yeah.
great.
And when it comes to potty training them, do you remember potty training them? And
I remember them as being fairly similar to one another. Oh, no, that's not really true. my younger daughter was pooping her pants much longer than my older daughter. And this is a famous story that we always tell about. I'm sure she's going to kill me if she hears me telling this in a public.
Well, we didn't say we didn't say her name, so she at least has that.
Okay. All right. So she was pooping her pants when she was way too old to be doing that, and we said, I'm not going to say her name. Why did you do that? And she said, I was busy. So whenever she tells us she's busy, we always say, don't forget to poop in the toilet.
Oh, my God, that is the best thing ever. I was busy. I got things to do, Ma. I got things to do.
that's brilliant.
Oh, my God, that's so
Oh,
great.
my God, that reminds me of going back to my father. Since farts were so important to us, my dad would work during the weekdays, and he had long hours because he had a corporate job. And on the weekends, he would take me and my brother out for like excursions to the park or museums or whatever. And we'd always sit in the front seat. And before we even got down the driveway, there were so many times when my brother and I would shit our pants because we were trying to impress my father by farting in front of him.
Oh, no.
And
it was a little... You didn't mean to be shitting your pants. It just
because we were so little, we didn't realize the control of a fart versus a poop. And I just remember as a kid, my dad constantly looking over us like, don't shit your pants. Oh, my God. Because he didn't want to turn the car around to clean us up and leave again. But we were trying to impress him.
Yeah.
Oh,
you
my
were trying
God.
to show off.
Oh, my God.
And it backfired.
Literally.
Yeah. He's like, what did I do? Oh, what did I start here?
I created two monsters.
Yeah, literally, two shit monsters.
Right.
I think we should just end the show with a little bit of news. I'll make it quick, and then we can get you out of here.
Okay.
Here we go. So this news story came from our super fan, Rose Martin, who we love. And again, like I do this all the time. And now I don't know why majority, if not everyone should do this, but there's a whole article in Forbes by Alexandra Sternlicht that was basically saying why you should flush with the lid down. And especially, this is very topical with the whole fecal oral transmission during this whole COVID-19 thing. So, top scientists or scientists have been warned that COVID-19 can be spread by oral fecal transmission. So the idea that when people go to the bathroom, they should always be putting their lid down, which I do constantly because the thought of particles, shit particles flying everywhere drives me crazy. So I've been doing this for years, and when people come over to our house and visit, they leave the lid up, and I'm like, did you just flush the toilet with the lid open? I don't understand that, but I'm not here to judge. It's just what I personally do. But now we have scientists around the world saying that everyone should be putting their lids down and flushing because 80% of the particles escape, fecal matter escape into the air after flushing. So it's like if you have your toothbrushes out there and they open, all that stuff. I mean, granted, these are microscopic, they're not you have to be doing this for I couldn't imagine how long or the volume for it to actually affect you. But I mean, it's still just the thought of it makes me like retch. It's so disgusting. But yeah, scientists are saying now, especially with the whole COVID-19 thing going on, that people should really be flushing with the lid down. And also, if you're in a public area, obviously you should be washing your hands, sanitizing everything around you, and then like flushing with like a glove or something on the actual flusher part if you happen to be in a public area. But it's just crazy to me that like, people flush with the thing open, the lid open. Even when I pee, I flush that thing down, or put the lid down. So I'm just...
Well, particles are the name of the game right now, huh?
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
And the whole fecal oral transmission is a lot higher for symptomatic people. So like,
wow.
It's just like if someone's like test positive for it, and you're sharing a space with them, they should definitely be like disinfecting the entire washroom with alcohol, or if you have access to some kind of ultraviolet light in between use, is really helpful. But they're saying like a study from the City University of Hong Kong found that a toilet flush can release up to 80,000 polluted droplets in the air.
Whoa!
For hours if the lid is left up. So, when you're at home,
with my check-in earlier in this episode, I talked about how I always put the lid down before I flush, but then I got nervous because my poop was so big. I wanted to make sure it really flushed down.
Oh, you just got blasted.
I've never flushed with the lid down, but now I'm going to consider doing it. That's very, very interesting.
Yeah, I do it all the time. I mean, I've been doing it for years. I just like my wife and I would do it for years. I mean, mainly we started doing it when we lived together because we had 2 kittens at the time. And we were nervous that we were going to like start playing in the toilet or something because we had friends that had happened to their cats. So but I mean, I've been doing that before that just because the thought of like, and I keep my toothbrush like inside the medicine cabinet. Just I don't know, just like it's insane. But I thought that was a really like awesome article, and I wanted to share it with the world.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Yeah,
it's so interesting to hear your contrasting experiences of pooping. You're so opposite of each other.
Yeah, I mean, my whole thing with this podcast, I just love the funny shit story aspects of it. Like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to like smell it or touch. But I love like
you like hearing about it.
Oh my God, it makes me laugh. It's just so funny to me. Like it just because everybody's been there, everybody can relate.
Yeah.
But again, like as Ellen always says, like since we started doing this thing, we've kind of like turned it more into like laughing, but lost learning anything about like butt related stuff, so it's kind of fun to like pair the two together.
Yes. It was great to talk to you guys.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show, by the way.
Thank you so much.
And real quick, where can we find you?
I mean, you want my email?
Well, no. I mean, like if you're on social media, like these blogs that you post for people, like where can like the listeners like find out all the information that you're putting out there?
I have a website.
Sure. Yeah. What's the website?
Dr. Sue Kolod.
Perfect.
That's amazing.
Thank you so much for being on this show. This is like amazing.
Well, thank you for asking me. It was nice to talk about something other than the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yes. Agreed.
We are here for the laughs and the poops and the farts.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But again, thank you so much. And stay safe out there. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, you guys too.
Excellent.
Happy pooping, everybody, and toot, toot, toot.
Hey Poopy Podcast is brought to you by Perfect 4 Entertainment. Produced by Dave and Ellen, with executive producer Stormy Leather, edited by me, Dave.
For more information, go to heypoopypodcast.com for episodes, merch, and more. Follow us on Instagram at heypoopypodcast and Twitter at heypoopy. Theme song by Jordan Perlson. Hey Poopy.